lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan. Back with me again, my boy Mario. We are going to continue, talking Image and its long history. This time, we're gonna jump into the cliffhanger sub imprint of Wildstorm that Joe Madureira, Humberto Ramos, and J. Scott Campbell launched. But we're going to start with Battle Chasers. That's the book we're going to talk about today. The book that was notoriously late throughout its entire print run. I was looking it up, and it said it had an average of 6 months between issues, including a delay of 16 months for issue 7, which is absolutely insane, but kind of the norm back then in terms of like Image comic books and stuff in the 90s coming from Image Comics. Not the case anymore, but I think Joe Madureira, who's the co-creator of it, artist, made a huge name for himself with X-Men. I think he started drawing X-Men at like 19 or something. I don't know. He was really young when he took over X-Men or became the artist on there. So this book was highly anticipated. I didn't read it till probably years later. I don't remember exactly when. I didn't pick it up when it first started. I mean, it came out when I was in maybe first year middle school. So it wasn't on my radar, but I love that fantasy genre. Like it's definitely like inspired by like D&D and RPGs and stuff like that. Like anybody that knows about Joe Madureira, he eventually goes and designs video games. I think he even did Battle Chasers video game as well. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the first time I actually read it from beginning to end. I think I had like a few issues here and there, and obviously, like I think for me, this is more reading it now. For me, it's more I enjoy the art more than I necessarily enjoy the story. And obviously, it's only 9 issues, so I feel like there's so much setup for what it could be, and I think the potential of what it could have been if it had gone on, and he didn't stop doing the book, which is coming back eventually. I know there's
supposedly
pages. There's
only been like 20 years.
I mean, there's another artist that's turned in all of issue 10. He's almost done with 11, he said, and about to start issue 12. So we'll see when that actually drops. But I love this imprint. Like Danger Girl was, I think, the first book I read, and then Crimson, which I really dug too. But Battle Chasers just recently got they just did a complete collection of the trade, I think, in anticipation of this book coming back. But I mean, I dig it. Don't get me wrong. I love the art. I love the genre that he does. And I don't know how you say his name. Munir Sharif he's a co-writer with Joe Mad, and then Adam Warren does some backups. It's funny, like looking at the coloring from this era, because everything just looks like liquid, kind of. It has a sheen to it. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean,
it's simpler coloring than we see now.
But I think, look, I mean, it doesn't even end up at Image. Like this book starts with Image and ends up being part of DC when Jim Lee sells it. So I'm looking at the covers. So I think it's just the first 4 issues are printed under the Image banner. So for me, it was like,
that was like what, a year and a half? Those 4 issues are like 2 years.
Yeah, April, May, July. Then it goes to October. Then it goes to May. Then it goes to August.
It's like 2 years
January,
for just 4 issues.
May, and then September. But who knows what years those are? I mean,
actually came out.
Yeah, I mean, look, it started in April '98 and it ended in August of 2001. 9 issues in almost a 2-year span. It's kind of crazy, and it sucks because I feel like he's such a great artist, and he just left completely. Like he just dipped out. He was cool. I mean, I'm sure he made some good money from what he did print, especially with, I don't know what the deal was like when they moved to Wild or DC, but all those guys made so much money. And like, obviously you can tell, like, I think maybe his first love isn't comics. I don't know. I haven't read a lot of interviews with him, but I can only assume that he is more into the video game aspect because of how influenced this comic feels like it was in Final Fantasy.
The interesting thing about this when I read it is that it immediately made me want to play Darksiders, which I don't know if you've heard of that game.
I've heard of that game. I've never played it.
It's like kind of a rip-off of this. Like the character designs are very similar. But he designed all the characters in that game,
Yeah.
and it made me want to play that game immediately because it's a similar vibe. Although that one takes place in like the modern world, but it I immediately downloaded and started playing the first one again because it was like, oh, it got me amped for that.
This made me want to play Final Fantasy. Is what it
Yeah, I
made
mean,
me
I really
want.
like the book. I mean, I like the setup. I think the world building is really good.
I do too.
Like
I
I
think
totally buy.
it doesn't feel rushed at all.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched that animated show Arcane, which is based on League of
No,
Legends.
no, everybody's been that
So that
so
one's
many
got a
people I know are talking.
similar vibe where it's supposed to be, it's fictional city and it's kind of feels like one of those RPG kind of things.
Mhm.
But this reminded me like a prototype of that, where you got all these different factions and a lot of stuff is happening, and you got the main character, you got an old character coming back.
Mhm.
It's got like the rusty sword that's got to bring it back out, and there's a lot of shit like, and there's a kid, and there's gauntlets. That's actually an Arcane too. Um, so it reminded me like a prototype of that, just a but of the time because it's a little bit dated.
Yeah, it feels dated, but it doesn't, like, even as I'm reading it, like I noticed that anytime a book of this type, it just doesn't seem to last. I don't know many comic book titles that are within this genre that go for very long. I think that the closest thing I can think of recent memory would be Birthright by Joshua Williamson.
Mm.
Totally steeped in this type of like fantasy world, fucking orcs and stuff and shit like that, and all different types of, different, like, I guess different class of fighters. I don't know how else to describe it, but like you got your fucking archer type character, stuff like that. But it just, I don't know. I wish there was more stuff like this. And I know I said before we recorded that this was the book I probably had the least amount to talk about, but I've already found that I'm talking a lot more than I thought I would. But it's upsetting to me because, like, I do feel like you said, the world building and the setup was done in such a way that nowadays, like, it feels like sometimes they give you too much too quick, and it's like, and it doesn't really feel thought out. This one did feel thought out, and then it's done. I can't imagine if I was getting this book, if it was on my pull, I probably would have dropped it. I mean, hold on, I'll tell you.
Well, you wouldn't remember what the hell was happening every issue.
I can't do that. Like just the October to May, between 4 and 5. Now, I don't know how much of that's Joe Madden or how much of that is the sale of Wildstorm to DC, because I can imagine maybe that did play a factor. I don't know the release dates of like Danger Girl, which launched around the same time, or Crimson. I know Crimson lasted the longest. I think it's like 24 issues, if not longer. But every other thing from this imprint, I mean, think about those artists like Joe Mad, Humberto Ramos, and J. Scott Campbell.
Yeah.
Right. Then you had Chris Pachalo doing steampunk, which didn't really hit very well, but it's just such a shame that.
I think Joe Mad in general is an interesting thing in the comic industry because anyone that's younger doesn't really know who he is. Because I remember when he came back for Avenging Spider-Man.
I know nobody fucking gave a shit.
I remember a lot of people not like being like, why are you guys losing their mind over this guy? And it's just, if you're a certain age and you happen to be looking at this stuff at a certain time, you remember fondly of his X-Men stuff.
Yeah, dude, I lost my shit when they announced the Spider-Man book with him. He
has a certain following of certain people of a certain age, but everybody else doesn't, kind of lost it because he wasn't really around the limit. We talked about that when we talked about recording this, that you look at his bibliography and it's not very long. He's literally only done like 40 issues ever, period. And like 30 of those or 25 or whatever are just X-Men alone. Because everything else he does, he only appears for he only does like 4 or 5 issues and then he bounces.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally looking at his bibliography. 2 issues of Excalibur.
Yeah, that's the first thing he did that. Yeah,
Deadpool Circle Chase, which I love. That's like one of my favorite Deadpool stories because I love his style was a little bit different back then, And then he did his Uncanny. He does there's a couple stuff where he had fill-ins. He did come back for Ultimates 3.
Oh, right.
He did do that 5-issue arc. Astonishing X-Men. He did a few issues of Amazing Spider-Man, Savage Wolverine. And then he did launch Inhuman when Marvel gave up on
was that Charles Soule?
X-Men. I thought wasn't Fraction writing?
It was either that or Soule. I can't remember. But yeah, he only does like 5 issues max, and then he just takes off.
Well, yeah, and he also takes a long time. I mean, he had such a bad track record with fucking Battle Chasers that I guarantee there's no way he even fucking was allowed to do it until they were all done, or they didn't. At least they didn't announce it, right?
Right. But yeah, he's got a certain name. You know, it's still, even all these years now, a certain amount of people still have, you know, remember that name.
For sure. And there's probably people like us that if there's a book announced with him doing it,
you're curious.
It's an automatic buy.
Yeah.
And, you know, at least the first issue checkout, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I will. Anything he does, I'll at least do the first issue. And even though he's not drawing Battle Chasers, I still want to get it, you know?
Yeah.
If nothing else, than to see, like, was it even worth it that they brought it back, or should they have just let it just stay away? I mean, I'd like to think that, you know, he wouldn't really want to tarnish. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it has such a stigma against it for being so late. Like,
yeah,
I would think he wouldn't want to bring it back unless he thought he had a good story to tell, or
do like a reimagining, like a new telling of it from scratch to kind of reset it.
Yeah, but he's literally continuing it from issue 10.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just strange. I don't know. I don't know that why you would bring it back. I know it's got the name, if you know what it is, but why not just restart it and have it just start from scratch with the new team or whatever? But
I don't know. I think like it started a new arc. Did issue 9 like left on a cliffhanger? So I think that's kind of why.
Well, it sucks too. It left at the Battle Chasers being formed. Like, all the issues were just set up for it to finally be like, oh, here's what the team looks like, and then that's where it ends.
And I mean, I think people too, like, the stylized art, right? Like, if it's not completely anatomically correct, like super big hands, right?
Gigantic,
super fucking gigantic. Yeah, that I think there's a certain amount of people that just can't deal with that kind of stuff. We have a mutual friend that I'm sure would probably have a comment or two to say about that. You know, it's like the same thing with like Liefeld and a lot of 90s artists were super stylized. Like, they had their thing. Like, J. Scott Campbell had his thing. Joe Mad had his thing. Fucking Liefeld, McFarlane, Larson. Like, they all had a very unique style within themselves. Like, they weren't what you'd call like a house style, like, for lack of a better way of saying, like, you know, like, there's just, I hate to say generic, but there's like some artists that it's just a very generic style.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like there's much uniqueness to their art. But Joe Mad is, I mean, I don't think there's anybody like him. Definitely not anymore. And even at the time, I think he stood out so far from the pack, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I made a huge splash. Like I said, anybody that's of a certain age remembers that name, because, I mean, think about how few issues he did, and he's still remembered all these years later.
I know, it's rare.
Yeah,
it's like a band that fucking puts out an album like once every fucking 7 years or something.
Yeah.
But when it comes out, you're all about that album, you know? Yeah.
And the craziest thing is, I think that first book, Excalibur, that he did, he was like 17.
Yeah, that's nuts, dude.
That's insane.
I mean, you also, yeah, I mean, it just seems like back then it was so much easier to get in at such a young age. I mean, you have somebody like Jim Shooter, who wrote his first comic book for DC when he was like 14 years old or something. Like, that's
crazy.
That doesn't happen now.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you're 24 and you're writing a fucking comic book for Marvel and DC, you know?
Right.
Like, it's so much harder to get in. It does make me sad that we didn't get more from him, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of creators that I feel that way with, you know, like, their star burns really bright and then they're just,
yeah, they just kind of go to the background.
Yeah. And it's not like he just like went away and didn't do anything. I mean, he did go off and he has a whole nother career. I mean, he literally, he's had 2 careers. He had his comic book career, which he dabbles back in every once in a while, and then his video game career, which is probably makes way more fucking money.
Yeah. It's probably way more lucrative.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what happened. Maybe he started hearing more from people wanting him to just jump on as a creative designer instead of having his entire comic book.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, it's clear he's a huge gamer, right?
Yeah.
Just based on the types of, like, what his influences are, especially with this book. Yeah, that's funny. I'm looking at liquid graphics. That's the colors. That's why everything looks like liquid. Like they poured liquid over everything. It does though, doesn't it? I don't know. To me, it's like there's stuff that's shiny that shouldn't be.
Well, yeah. Then the biggest sell is also the Anatomy of the Women is also very,
I mean,
1998.
yeah, look at those things, dude. These things freaking suffocate you. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still really like it. It's more of a relic of a time.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. I'm like, because some of the stuff that I've gone back and reread with Dylan or stuff that you and I have done videos on, I'm like, how's this going to hold up? Am I going to have to like, is it going to be a chore to get through this? And I wouldn't classify this under it was a chore to get through, but it definitely was a product of its time. So it will be interesting to see how the continuation of it feels once it comes back. Because like you said, I mean, right now it's 21 years ago. You know what I mean? Or in August, it'll be 21 years since the last issue was published. Like that's crazy.
Kids were born and they graduated college in that time.
Yeah. Like my brother was an infant when this fucking, no, maybe not an infant. He's like a year old, two years old when this fucking book started.
And now as a full grown adult.
He's a fucking, that towers over me. Yeah. I don't know. I like I said, it's not, the story was to me was nothing groundbreaking, but I did enjoy the world building and the potential of what it could have been, you know? Yeah. But again, like for me, most of these books from early Image and first few years of Image, except another book we're going to talk about, it's more art focused, you know? It's not as much focused on like the dialogue or the storytelling. It's like, no, I want to just fucking put some cool shit in. You want to look at some cool shit, you look at Joe Mad's art. Like you take all the words out of here, I'll still enjoy the book. Yeah. You know, like I miss this style. I miss seeing his stuff, you know? And the Avenging Spider-Man, when he came back, it was okay. You know, like the story was,
I don't even remember what they were anymore. I remember Wolverine.
It was forgettable.
I can remember the art, but I can't remember what the hell it was even about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's to me, that's what kind of sucks. If I can't remember the story, it's to me, it's problem. Yeah. I want, it needs to be both. For me, for it to be a really good comic book, it needs to have at least a decent story so that I can remember it. If I can't remember anything about the fucking plot, 2 days after I read it, then you don't have a winner, you know, with me. But I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's easy to get now.
There's a collection. You can get it on Comixology and stuff. Yeah,
Comixology. Image had that collection, I think 2 years ago it came out in trade. I ended up getting the singles just
to have.
I like the singles. I also don't like sometimes what they do when they recolor shit or it's on different paper. It just kind of changes it for me. But I definitely recommend checking it out. Worth the historical significance of that period of Image and the transition from there to DC, when DC just ruined all of Wildstorm. But
yeah, and if you want to know where any of the character designs came from,
I mean, I wonder how many fans of the game didn't even know that it was a fucking comic book.
I don't know. I remember I heard about the game because I heard Joe Mad was designing. I remember seeing his early sketch work and being excited for the game when it originally came out. The games are pretty old too. It came out in like, I want to say like 2007, the first one. But I was excited about it because Joe Mad was on.
Right.
And then I played it and I liked it. But yeah, I don't imagine most people knew that he was the thing.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily the gaming fans and comic fans always cross, you know. But like I said, I think it's worth checking out. And if nothing else, it's got really dope art. But that's all I got to say about the book. I can't really say much about the story because I remember it, but it's, you know, it's like I said, it's mostly buildup. So I can't really, and I'm mad that it didn't continue. So that's my final thoughts on it.
Well, it ends at the worst part.
Yeah,
like the whole thing is called Battle Chasers, and the whole thing is about how all these people are going to collect into this group because they're trying to fight against this other group. And the last image is really literally, oh, here they are, and that's the end. That's all we got ever.
Even though it's shitty that it ended like that, I would suggest definitely fucking catching up so that when it does come back, which I think I saw something not that long ago, that they're getting close to soliciting, so that way you can catch up before it starts. And If you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new vid goes up. And on that note, we're out.